welcome 4 of our candidates for Activities and Development Officer. Can I ask that everybody, when responding to questions or introducing themselves, raises their voice so everyone can hear and we can pick up the video camera as well, please. So every candidate, you will have 1 minute each to introduce yourselves and state why you think you should be elected. Joseph, did you have a question?
Raising the pitch or volume?
Raising the volume, please. The pitch is entirely up to you. Okay, so Joseph, you'd like to begin with your 1 minute introduction, please.
Okay. So comrades, it's brilliant to see you all here today. What a fantastic turnout. And also, I want to thank again Mancunian for providing just good use at the back of this room. So 2 things that I'd like to pick up on. The first one is the Students' Union Centre. I would really like to be pushing that, making it really big and just providing a lot of support for that. And the second part, something that's often neglected within this role is activities and development, which is to do with careers. And although it's important to help people develop their CV and think of what job they want to go into, I think it's also important to develop people's ideas that when they go into the workplace, they'll be entering into a class struggle. They'll either be a member of the bourgeoisie, well, let's face it, we're not Oxfordshire, so that's not many people, or they'll be entering the proletariat. So I'd like to just develop their ideas within that and help them to work within that class struggle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where we have Daniel, please.
Yeah, so I'm running based on improving the representation of societies within the university, using a couple of techniques of engaging more societies through creating more active activities for them, creating a Pangea committee which would allow me to spend more time with societies, building on the successes of the Refreshers Fair, so continuing the Refreshers Fair, and creating an office hour. In that way I'm open and accessible person within the Union for Societies, which is what the Activities and Development Officer essentially is there to provide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Joy, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, well, I definitely want to represent students from the university, and I want to help them to be creative and create something memorable for everyone, because mostly everyone has 3 years of university and everyone can feel the clock ticking. So I think being Activities and Development Officer is all about helping students to create something massive and create a legacy as well.
Okay, thank you. John.
Hi, my name's Joel. I'm running for activities because I've had a really good time at Manchester in all the extracurricular stuff I've done. I think it's probably been more of a contributory learning experience than my actual degree. And I think it's really, really important that there is so much in Manchester you can get involved in. I've got a lot of experience with societies, and I've also put on a lot of events, so I think I've got both of those sides of the role covered. I'm really passionate about making the SU a space that everyone can contribute to, somewhere that people feel like they're part of it as a project, that it's something that they've been part of and that they want to see do well. I think that will help it succeed. I feel like it's lost a little bit of the energy over the past few years that it once had. And I'd like to bring that back really. I'd like to make it a really great space for people to come and do everything they want to do at uni.
Okay, thank you. We will now begin with the questions. Josie, the first question we'll put to you first. Do you think student media should be independent from the students' union?
I think the students' media should unite with the BBC. We've got the BBC here in the city centre, the media centre, so I think it should drift northwards towards Salford and form big conglomerates between them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think someone's the side of the Activities and Development Officer is forgotten, and that's the employability side. And I think the student media should definitely be under the remit of the Activities Officer and therefore part of societies. Because that student media is one of the most active ways that students can sort of see a transition from a hobby into a career. So, and that's the same with all societies really.
Okay, thank you. Joy?
Can you ask the question again? Sorry.
Yes, of course. Do you think student media should be independent from the students' union?
Well, I think it depends how much the student unions limit the student media. But I think it's a good thing that they work together. If they work together, I don't see a problem of them working together, to be honest, as long as the student media can do what they want and what's influential for the university and will help students.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think independent media is really, really important. I think a lot of people like the fact that the Mancunian can take a stance that isn't always in agreement with the Students' Union. If it didn't, then we'd be living in a sort of one-party state, which would be a bit daft. As Dan said, I think careers are really, really important. I think integrating what the possible career options are from the student media in better with by integrating them with societies as well. So trying to get more societies involved with what the Mancunian does, and also trying to get student media more involved with the activities that go on here. Because I think, for example, Pangea and other events that happen, there's starting to form links, but I'd really like to build on the media committee and try and really cement those links and make sure that students can get involved with absolutely everything going on here, whether that's through student media or directly with the activity.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next question and we'll begin with Daniel. With the budget to Pangea Festival highly dependent on the capacity and price of the event, how would you seek to continue to expand Pangea, and do you think it's value for money?
Yeah, I think it's great value for money. Within the city, there's a lot of there's the warehouse projects, there's Drop of Mustard, there's Sankeys that are charging £15, £20, £25 to just see 3 or 4 acts. The variety that Pangea puts on, not just in terms of the artists in the books, but in terms of the events that go on during the evening, I think comparable, or if not better value for money than other events that are put on in Manchester. In terms of expanding it though, the creation of the Pangea Committee was kind of central to my manifesto, and that would mean that it's more engaged with students' wants and needs, and so sort of getting empowered people who are interested in music and the creative side and the booking side and the artist liaison side, and just simply improve the festival really.
Okay, thank you. Joy?
Well, Pangea definitely is a great expense for the university, but I think the main thing is always the student voice, what the students want. So for example, this year I believe that we have the first LGBT room for Pangea, which was really nice. So that this way we can make it bigger and just get new ideas from students and just see how we can effectively do it, even if it's going to cost money. But if the students want something, we have to find a way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
Yeah, I think it's great value for money. I think there's a lot of really good events going on in Manchester, and there's a real need for Pangea to compete with them. At the same time, it's a student-led festival, and that's why it is such good value. It's completely run by and for students, and it means that it is a really creative project. It's something that people should feel part of, and it's just really good. In terms of expanding it, I think the ticket price is about right, but I'd like to, in my manifesto I've mentioned adding an extra dome stage as part of a broader sort of improvement on the visual and production values of the festival. I think accessibility is an issue as well though. The ticket price is quite high, and I'd definitely look at some way of maybe offering cheaper tickets to students on bursaries or something like that.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
Yeah, I've been to Placenta twice myself, and that was with Save Our NHS, and with that I got in for free. So like for me, like it was worth every penny. But I do think the cost of it can be quite prohibitive to some students, and therefore like I would like to abolish the whole concept of money in capital, because like not only does it create some issues with accessibility with Pangea, but it also creates a whole notion of wage slaves and the proletariat being exploited.
Okay, thank you. Joy, we'll move on to the next question and you'll begin. The development aspect of activities and development relates to working to improve employability at the union and university. How would you work with the university to do this?
Well, definitely, well, we already have lots of events for employment for students, but I think what we need is something that is going to make students actually want to attend those events. So I think we definitely have to work with the promotion aspect of it to be more fun, because I feel like most of the advertisements we have for this, for employment events around the university are not very tempting for students and make them quite apprehensive. So we have to find a way to make them actually want to go for it.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, there's two things in my manifesto that I think are good for the development side. First is an alternative careers fair. I think there's obviously loads of careers fairs that the university runs, but I want to consult with the careers department and see if we can look at organising something with more dynamic companies, internet startups, charities, and companies that students might not otherwise consider as a possible career option. And I think that links really well with societies. So I think working with societies to find out what their members might benefit from, and also with RAG to see how they could incorporate charities into what they're doing. As well, I want to start a creative network, which will both feed back into Pangea and the other events that I want to organise next year, but also provide a training side, so workshops and everything from lighting and sound design to visual design, just everything creative, and that will then also provide a lot of future career options for the people involved.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
Although, I think this is a really important question, because, the only reason that students do go to university is so that they can get a job. I feel like I don't want to spend much time on this, because I feel like I've already answered this question in my introduction, where I said I would focus more on educating them on class struggle.
Okay, thank you. Daniel?
Well, with employability, I think a couple of things that are already in place within the union, such as the careers fair, part-time jobs fair, just work on improving them. So with part-time jobs fair, we'll be working with the GenSec to take more of an active role for the activities and development officer. So, because I know it was created by Nick Pringle last year, I think. So at the moment it's under the remit of the GenSec, but I think it's probably something that the activities officer should take a more active role in. With the careers fairs, I think it's important to sort of take away the corporate side of the careers fair and encourage local businesses to become involved. So sort of creating a relationship between Manchester and the careers fairs. And another thing is with the Pangea committee that volunteering certificates will be sort of issued to anyone who is volunteering at Pangea, which is something that that can go on the CV. That looks really good on the CV for anyone who wants to work in sort of creative industries and music industry. Finally, sort of linking societies with employability. So just sort of encouraging people to join societies for the reason of the fact that it sort of encourages them to develop interests and sort of link those interests with their careers.
Okay, thank you, that's your time. John, as a member of the executive team, the Activities and Development Officer is involved in various aspects of the union outside of the immediate remit. One aspect is the priority campaign, in which all members of the exec work to campaign on a single issue. What do the candidates think should be the priority campaign 2014/15?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. For me, the key priority of the SU has to be constantly keeping students involved. So I think student engagement would be a really, really good campaign to run. I think it does tie in with what I want to do personally in the role. Yeah, I think engagement with the SU and trying to make students feel part of this, I guess, rather than it just being a distant idea of just being something political or something that isn't necessarily that fun.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
Yeah, so in addition to the answer given in the previous question time, I think I would like to do a big push on eggs. I think eggs are really important. And I think maybe running a weekend in March or April where eggs play a key focus to that weekend. Maybe people could give each other chocolate eggs during that weekend. It's just something I've been toying with, but I think that should be definitely a campaign that the exec should spend each year leading up towards.
Okay, thank you. Daniel?
Okay, I think as Joel said about student engagement, that's obviously crucial. One of the ways that can be done, I think, is by sort of specifically to do with the activities officers whose remit is quite strongly to do with societies, is making sure that the Refreshers Fair is as effective as it can be. I think even though it's created this year, I think it needs to be more promoted better. More societies need to get involved with the by having stalls at the Refreshers Fair, and that way it gives students a second opportunity to join societies rather than simply just at the Welcome Fair and Refreshers Week. Another thing under the activities officer agreement would be having more representative events, building on Global Week, building on Community Week, so we're making sure that all the events that are on the union, not just to do with Pangea, with other events such as Global Week and non-union events, that sort of thing, making sure that they're appealing to a wide range of societies of students as possible.
Okay, thank you. That's your time. Joy, if you'd like to answer the question.
Priority campaign would definitely be a sense of community and innovation. A community, I think, what Latino University is an event that everyone comes together and actually cheers as one for our university. I think we are missing that sense of proudness of being a university. That's why one of my the main point of my manifesto would be University Olympics, which would be competition against all rival universities, for example, Manchester Metropolitan and Salford. And my second point would be innovation, because I think students, we have great ideas, but sometimes we lack confidence to actually follow through with this. And I think we need someone that's going to tell you that your ideas are valid.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, the next question will be given to you.
Thank you.
At present, student media at the union is at a rather low level. Fuse TV are restricted in the quality they can produce due to poor technology. Fuse FM are experiencing technical difficulties and misinformation/mistakes are repeatedly printed in the Mancunian. What do you think would be the best way to begin to improve student media, considering the financial situation the union is in?
I guess, like you say, we're in a financial situation, but I guess it's also like, where do you place your priorities? Whether like your priorities are in developing student media, or whether you're like pouring money elsewhere. I think it's definitely a good way to improve students' personal development, and it's definitely something you could go to university to ask more money for in a block grant and say, look, we've got these things, if we had more money, then we could increase students' personal development, and it's something that can be tied in during those talks. Yeah, and slash capitalism.
Okay, thank you. Daniel?
I actually, with respect to Mancunian, I wrote for Mancunian last year a bit in the film section. I actually applied to be editor of the film section. I didn't actually get it anyway. But one of the reasons I ran was because I was quite frustrated with the quality of the writing in the Mancunian. I think it's not actually written that well. There's lots of mistakes that are easy to find, even sometimes on the front page, which I think is unacceptable. I'm quite sort of, I'm hot and brown about it. Anyways, but I think challenging the section editors is something that really needs to be done more effectively, because I mean it's not really feasible to have employed section editors, but I think the people who do it, despite the fact that they're doing it on time schedule, despite the fact that they're volunteers, they really need to make sure that their sections are edited properly. I think that overall would improve the quality of Mancunian.
Okay, thank you. Joy?
Can you ask again, sorry?
Yeah, of course. At present, student media at the union is at a rather low level. Fuse TV are restricted in the quality they can produce due to poor technology. Fuse FM are experiencing technical difficulties, and misinformation and mistakes are repeatedly printed in the Mancunian. What do you think would be the best way to improve student media, considering the financial situation the union is in?
Well, I think even though you're saying that they have lots of mistakes, even on the front page, I think if the students made an effort to actually read, if people know that they actually read Mancunian, it would help them to get more motivated to fix.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
yeah, I've spoken to Fuse FM quite a lot about this because I know they've had technical difficulties this year, which, to my understanding, I think are now resolved. I think the problem they've had is exposure, really, and I think it's a real shame because we've got a lot of talent in Manchester that Fuse FM could both benefit from having on board and also would then benefit Fuse FM. So I think the first thing I'd like to do is cross-promote better. So like Fuse FM, Fuse TV and the Mancunian ought to be linked off My Manchester. I know the Mancunian is at the moment, but the other two as well. I think Fuse FM, I've spoken to them and I want to try and make it, try and have 2 headline shows on Friday and Saturday night that would, between 7 and 10 PM, that would start as a base for building an audience by playing it in Vico's Cafe, playing it in the new bar at those times when we've got really high quality programming, and then build from there. With regard to the Mancunian, I know there's been the issue with the paid editor, which is policy that hasn't happened because of the budget issues. I think that is really important. Obviously, the Mancunian used to be was the best student newspaper in 2009 or 10, I think, and I think it'd be really good to get it back to that level. And again, I think I want to incorporate more things into the Mancunian, like a society timetable and the Fuse FM schedule, which I think will benefit all a lot.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start with Daniel on this one. What do you know about the work of Student Action and how do you intend to support it?
Honestly, not a huge amount of knowledge about Student Action really, but in terms of the activities in London Officer, I think it's important to just support them in their events and their goals as an independent from societies. And the fact that they're Student Action Mag and societies, they're sort of emphasise their importance. I think just supporting their events and campaigns really.
Okay, great. Joy?
I don't know much about Student Action as well, but if they need support, I'm here for it. I would be there for it. So we would come up with a plan of how can we raise fundings for them so that they can get what they want.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
Yeah, I think it fits in with making SU more of a student hub. Student Action would really benefit from being involved in the events that the SU hosts, such as Pangaea. I think, yeah, just trying to get more involved and more support, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
I'm assuming the Student Action and the volunteering section of the Students' Union, and that's student-led volunteering. So I got involved in that for myself in September. I was helping out Willowbank Kids place. I volunteered there once, and I signed up there like afterwards, like to do it again. And there was no places for me. So like from my experience, I found that like what I wanted to do is being oversubscribed. So like I maybe look around. Also, I maybe want feedback from people who have been involved in it. So I got involved, and then I wasn't able to get involved again because I was finding things were oversubscribed. So maybe get feedback from people who are volunteering. Did they like the experience? Like how could Student Action be a benefit to them? Yeah. Also, like exposure is really important. So maybe getting them involved in like I'd really like to have a refreshers fair in like January, February, and have Student Action there, so that more people could get involved in there. I don't know much.
Thank you. Joy, we'll start the next question with you. Do you think campaigning is part of your role as activities officer?
Oh yeah, definitely. Campaigning is what makes you go over there. It's about activity, so expressing an idea, which is mostly what students are looking for when they come to activities and development officer.
Could I ask that you raise your voice, everybody, when you want to speak as well?
Yeah. Do you want me to say it again?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So yeah, I do think campaigning is would be part of my role because campaigning is all about expressing ideas. So it's what students come for it's what students see when they come to an activities and development officer, ways to express their idea.
Okay, great, thank you. John?
Yeah, definitely. I think campaigning is part of every exec role. I think you've got to be able to persuade people of certain points of view because the exec are there to facilitate the things that students want to do. So without being able to campaign and convince other people that what the students are doing is good, then you won't be able to do anything. I think I've got a lot of really relevant experience with that. I've been involved with tuition fees process in 2010 right through to Reclaim Your Campus, Manchester Young Greens. I think I can really bring that sort of campaigning energy to the role. One of the main campaigns I'd like to run is on room booking fees. So I know a lot of big societies really struggle with the cost of lecture theatre hire. I'm going to argue with the university that while we're waiting for the third floor to be developed on the SU, that we really need extra space. In February it was really difficult to get society room booking. I don't think that's acceptable really when there's so many empty lecture theatres. So I'll try and work on having 2 lecture theatres temporarily co-opted in the process of construction so that we can get them at a really discounted rate.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
Well, I think campaigning is part of my role as a human being. There's a really great quote that I like, that activism is the rent that I pay for existing on this planet. So yeah, I think that the struggle is part of my struggle. The struggle in the revolution is my duty.
Okay,
Yeah, no, I think obviously campaigning is a really, really important part of the activities officer role. Again, something that came up when speaking with a number of different societies. There was an issue with room booking fees. That was something I've included in my manifesto about working with the room. The people that organise the venue team anyway, the university to reduce fees, starting a campaign for that. In terms of supporting other people's campaigns, charitable campaigns such as WAG. I mean, one of my things is including WAG when it comes to Pangea, using the downstairs area of Students' Union as an area for WAG to raise money during Pangea, so having fundraising events and other ways that you can support charitable campaigning is by just encouraging societies that are putting on their own campaigns and charitable events to just work with WAG and work with the activities I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question. We'll begin with John. If you had to cancel Pangea, what would you replace it with?
That's an interesting question, that one. I think I would replace it with something which was a much cheaper event, something entirely student-run, with a huge showcase of students, basically. I think I would replace it with student DJs, something kind of similar, I guess, but less sort of big lineup and much more for everyone, and ideally free. But, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
I think placenta exists because if it didn't exist, then it'd be something that we would have to create as student ourselves. But if we were to replace it, then I'd maybe replace it with a large wooden ship filled with eggs.
Okay. Dan?
I really don't think that Pangea should be an event that's cancelled within the union. The amount of money that it makes for the union is fantastic. The amount of money it makes for bars. And the fact that it gets students engaged with the union is one of the biggest. Is it the biggest? The most? I mean, something like 8,000 people are voting in this election, whereas 5,000 people, 6,000 people are going to Pangea. So it's one of the most sort of best ways for the union to engage with the wider student population. I mean, what needs to change with Pangea is it just needs to be more student run. I think that way you're engaging actively as well as not just as a punter at Pangea, you're actually engaging with the way it's run, who's playing there. If it was more student led, I don't think there'd be any question about it being cancelled.
Okay, thank you. Joy?
Yeah, I also don't think Pangea should be cancelled, and I'll definitely replace it with a smaller party. And it would be something cheaper, a cheaper version of Pangea.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the next question. We'll start with Joe. As Activities and Development Officer, how will you help societies to establish themselves and grow? Something which may be lacking at the moment.
Well, as a member of the Green Party, I think it's important for me to say that I oppose growth, but I think it is important to have a 3-day Freshers' Fair at the start of the year so that more people can go to a Freshers' Fair. I went and I felt really intimidated myself being there. It was really packed. So if you spread it out over 3 days, it'd be less packed and be able to walk around more. And also having really developing the Freshers' Fair in January, February, and also signed up to like 10, and I got emails from like 1 at the start and then 0. So I think in teaching people how to send emails and also developing some sort of structure where people could send an email would like be really important in helping societies get in touch with their students, members.
Okay, thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, no, I think there's sort of two sides to it. One side being helping societies that are already in place to make sure that there's less sort of bureaucracy and less logistical stuff in their way. So one of the ways that I've been doing that would be working with NUS Digital to sort of sort out the society membership issue, working with the university venues to reduce fees for hiring lecture theatres and rooms. And then the other side to it is engaging with students to join societies, and I think one of the questions that came up in the questionnaire that we were asked was whether societies should be able to charge whatever they like for membership. And I think obviously there's going to be a variable membership rate, but we need to sort of engage with people from poorer backgrounds, and doing that by sort of putting on events with where societies look for subsidies and sponsorship from businesses rather than taking expenses from the union. And that way we can reduce the fees for membership, which means that more students are going to feel like they can access societies.
Okay, great, thank you.
I run out of time.
Okay, sorry. Joy, would you like to answer?
I'll probably first look what kind of society it is. For example, what's the budget? Because if you compare hiking society with a kneading society, obviously hiking society spends more than a kneading society. So then after that, I would help them to create events that would help them to get a budget to expand the society and promote the society events as well, working with the media of the university if possible.
Okay, great. John?
I think the key things in my manifesto that would benefit societies to grow and flourish. I want to set up a society timetable, so whenever a society creates an event, students on Facebook, they can send that to a programme which would then compile it, and people could be linked from the portal on My Manchester and have a look and see exactly what's going on with every society. And I think that would be a really good way of getting people to know about what's going on, because I think that's probably the biggest problem at the moment, is the lack of communication between societies and the people they want to try and involve. As well, I want to run a society showcase lunchtime once a week, where societies who want to do it will be able to come along and showcase the society and tell people what they're about, and try and engage people that way on a more regular basis than just at the Freshers' Fair. I want to also move the registration date for societies forward to the day when students get their A-level results, because I think that way the people who are really excited about coming to university can find out straight away what's going on. And as well, just improving the SU website links. I think making sure there's a really solid point of contact rather than just an email address for the chair, an actual link to the group where everything is being done would be really, really important for getting involved.
Okay, thank you. That's your time. We have one final question, and we'll begin with Daniel. What societies have you been involved in, and what are the main issues facing societies within the union?
Personally, I've been involved with the History Society as a history student, travelled to Berlin with the History Society, and they're quite a sort of dynamic society. They have quite a lot of history students involved. They've got their own newspaper. I think sort of the educational societies, the subject societies, are doing pretty well. But other than that, working on Pangea in the creative team, with the artist liaison, as an artist liaison. But I mean, what was the last part of the question?
What issues are facing societies within the union?
I think one of the main things is that they're not being able to, that they're finding it difficult to have a relationship with the activities officer. So I think one of the ways that I'm tackling that, helping to tackle that, would be by invigorating the activities forum, which is something that I mentioned earlier. I think that building a more sort of open relationship with the activities officer and the activities team, those three aspects of the union would help societies to sort of improve their status within the union.
Okay, great, thank you. Joy, fantastic. Yeah. What societies have you been involved in, and what are the main issues facing societies within the union?
I've been involved in quite a lot of societies, but I think the main ones that I usually frequent the most would be the Ballroom Society, the Feminist Society, and the CrossFit Society. And with CrossFit, I think their main issue would be definitely expenses, and they're finding hard to actually do their activities because it's an expensive sport, so it's kind of hard communicating with the union to make it cheaper sometimes.
Okay, thank you. John?
I'm involved with Manchester University Jazz Orchestra, Physics Society, chair of Manchester Young Greens, and also treasurer of Defender Education. I think the main problem with societies is that they don't always feel part of the union, so I think better support and integration is really key. Communication between the exec and the society. I think quite often societies feel like they're sort of left to do their own thing, which for some works, and for some I think they could do a bit more push in the right direction. I also tried out the canoeing society in second year, but it turns out they don't have any canoes that fit 6 or 6 people, which is quite frustrating. So I will definitely be contacting them and asking them to get a big canoe.
Okay, thank you. Joseph?
Well, like, we're all Thatcher's children now, and that there's no such thing as society. But me personally, I think the main issue in society is the struggle between a proletariat and a bourgeoisie. The groups that I've been involved in here are Young Greens and also Defender Education. It's a new group that I've been involved in setting up alongside Joel. And at my previous university, I was in Physics Society. I was the president of that, but to be like the second best physics society in the country,
Okay, thank you. We've had a final question submitted to us on Twitter, so we'll go to that now, so we've got just enough time. How do you intend to ensure Pangaea doesn't make a loss? And we'll start with Joseph, please.
Loss of what?
Money.
Right, okay. Well, like, the simple thing, like, for presenting not to lose money is, like, as I said before, to abolish the concept of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, right, Daniel.
I think creating the Pangaea committee was sort of make sure that it was totally on point, really, in terms of what students from the university want, and that sort of attitude will sort of ensure that it's sold out. And if you're basing the event on selling out, then it's a simple case of making sure that your expenses don't exceed the ticket cost.
Yep. Okay, great.
I think it's all about how to promote the event.
Just like to raise your voice, sorry, I've got noise in the back.
It's like, I think it's all about how you promote the event. The more promotion you get, if you get the right kind of promotion, then it should not be a failure.
Okay, great job.
I think Pangaea needs to remain exciting and dynamic. I think with it being a student-led festival, I think tying with the creative network I want to do, by having more people involved, that will naturally make people more likely to go because they'll feel part of it. It just needs to be the best student night in Manchester because it totally can be. It's got, a paid position that puts a lot of energy into it, and then also a whole group of people that really want it to do well. So I think so long as those people stay involved and also improve the visual side, which is in my manifesto, I think it can be the best night in Manchester, and then without a doubt it'll sell out. It's a really good value night at the moment. I think it can be the best.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That wraps up the questions for Activities and Development Officer. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, especially our 4 candidates here, Joseph, Daniel, Joy and Joel. And thank you very much for submitting questions. Just a final round of applause. Thank you very much.